Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving on last week. We're now ready to begin our regular scheduled board meeting for the Port Arthur Economic Development Corporation. May I have a roll call, please?
Beverly Raymond. Kayla Jacobs.
Here.
Jerry LaBeouf. Daryl Anderson. Morris Albright. Ingrid Holmes.
Here.
Melvin Gedwin. You have a quorum, Chair.
Let's stand for the invocation and the pledge. We thank you for allowing us to come together. We ask for clarity. Help us to make decisions that will be beneficial to our cities. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. States of America,
The republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have before us our minutes from our regular board meeting on November the 4th and our special board meeting on November the 12th. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Been moved and second to accept the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move now to presentations. First presentation is from Carl Griffin, Griffin Mosley Johnson, Whitehaven Estate on Lakeshore Drive. Are they here? Today, we may be able to go back to that. Our second presentation is a business attraction, retention, and expansion managers update on the PA EDC's incentive programs and the application process.
Good evening, directors. All right, in your packets, you should have all of the incentive program materials. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to present our updated incentive programs. The changes that were made they reflect our commitment to driving economic growth while ensuring we meet the diverse needs of our business community. Our approach is structured, intentional, and designed to showcase consistent progress, both with our larger long-term projects and with smaller high-impact opportunities. So let me explain how. First, we're going to start with the impact incentive. So that should be the first one in your packet. And you'll see that there is an acknowledgement form, there's a policy, an acknowledgement form, and then an application. But we're just going to talk about the policy for now. So this program is our cornerstone. It houses all of our incentive abilities and is specifically designed to attract and support major projects, what we call our big fish. So these are the transformative projects that bring significant investments, infrastructure improvements, and job creation to Port Arthur. The incentives offered in the impact program include capital expenditure reimbursements, infrastructure enhancements, and job creation rewards. While these types of projects are intentionally prioritized, they often take years to cultivate and bring to fruition. Negotiations are lengthy, and due to confidentiality, much of the work happens behind the scenes. This can leave you, the board, also the council, and the public with the impression that we are inactive, though nothing could be further from the truth. So to address that perception, I created 3 smaller, more focused programs designed to support smaller projects that may not hit all of the markers that are required for the impact program. These programs allow us to show activity and progress while continuing our work with larger projects in the background. So let me walk you through those programs. The first one is going to be the Bedrock Incentive. So that'll be the second program in your packet. And I don't believe that it printed out quite right, so the graphic on there doesn't reflect what is actually being given out to prospects. This program is all about infrastructure. It provides financial support for projects that require critical upgrades to utilities, roads, or site preparation. Companies may be able to receive up to 40% of their qualifying expenses with a minimum investment of $300,000. By focusing solely on infrastructure, this program ensures businesses have the foundational resources they need to operate and grow. For example, if a small manufacturer needs to extend a utility line to their facility, the Bedrock incentive can help offset those costs. So we're going to go on to the second of those small programs, and that's, yes, sir.
Where are you getting the 40%? And you said something else.
40% of the infrastructure cost with a minimum $300,000 investment.
I'm just going to hold it until we get to.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No problem. Our second one is the Career Creation Incentive. Workforce growth is a pillar of our economic strategy. So this program rewards businesses that create new full-time jobs for Port Arthur residents. Depending on the quality of the jobs and the wages offered, companies can receive between $1,000 and $5,000 per job. This program is perfect for businesses that may not have major infrastructure needs, but are committed to growing their workforce. Now, our third program is called the Investment Edge Incentive. This program is designed to encourage businesses to modernize and expand. It offers reimbursements for eligible capital expenditures such as purchasing new equipment, expanding facilities, and even acquiring new land. Businesses can receive up to 20% of their qualifying expenses with a cap of $500,000 per project. So here's how all of this works together. The Impact Program ensures that we remain focused on the large-scale projects that can redefine our local economy. These are high-value, transformative opportunities that require time, effort, and discretion to bring to life. Meanwhile, the smaller programs, the Bedrock, Career Creation, and Investment Edge, allow us to engage consistently with smaller businesses. These projects have shorter decision-making timelines and can quickly move from discussion to implementation. This strategy allows us to show tangible activity while the big projects are still in development. So let's talk about the process. I'm just going to go through a brief explanation of how the programs actually get implemented from beginning to end. So they start with an initial meeting where we assess the project's eligibility. If eligible, the applicant submits a completed application, then that's with all of their necessary documentation. We review that application and determine feasibility and calculate the project's return on investment. Then I will come to you in an executive session, present a high-level overview of that project. Once you have said, yes, go forward, we negotiate terms, and the agreement is reviewed and approved by you, the board, and then, of course, the city council. After the agreement is signed, the project moves forward, and we monitor milestone achievements. Incentives are dispersed as milestones are met, ensuring accountability every step of the way. And I just want to go back and mention all of the programs are performance-based, so everybody has to meet their milestones, then they see the money. So to conclude, I just want to say that I really appreciate y'all giving me the latitude to be able to revise all of our programs, and I want you to know that this approach ensures that we remain competitive and adaptable, addressing the needs of both our large and small businesses, and we're cultivating long-term success while showing consistent progress today. I look forward to your feedback and any questions that you may have.
Only question I have is where did you come up with these figures, these money figures?
It came through experience. The figures are what is going to be appropriate for investment and what is going to give us the best ROI. We don't want to go too high with our percentages, otherwise we're going to sink ourselves in a hole. We don't want to go too low, otherwise it's not going to be that helpful to a company. And you want to make sure that you've got an investment amount that is worth having an incentive conversation.
If we're going to do questions now. All right. The impact incentive policy. Let me get my glasses. By the way, I like all this.
Thank you.
Just for the record. On all right, on page 5. Impact incentive. In order to determine the feasibility of a project, both quantitative and qualitative analysis will be formed to determine the expected economic, environmental, and social impact. Should we be getting into the environmental side of this to judge? I mean, because I get the social impact, okay? You know, you don't want to put a nuclear reactor in the middle of a neighborhood, okay? But the environmental side, how are we qualified to answer that?
Mostly on the social aspect. So if let's say that you've got a meat processing facility that wants to come in and nowhere is available except near a residential space.
But you're not going to do that.
So that there's an environmental impact there, like your air quality has been impacted. We're going to make sure that we're judging that the project fits the city's needs, and our goals strategically. So I'm just making sure that we're not closed off, that we are looking at the social impact, obviously the economic impact, but that environmental piece, it's very, very broad. It could be air quality, it could be something that happens with the ground, it could be something that happens with the water. We're just leaving that open in case there is something that treads against that. It really doesn't suit our city well.
All right, I guess my question's this. Before a project gets kicked for environmental, would it come before the board?
Most likely, if it had a decent ROI, most
And the
likely.
reason why I'm asking is, to me, that would be more of a board decision. I don't want staff just to wipe something off because in their mind, you know, and then literally some project gets approved 6 months later and here comes a lawsuit going, you tell me how you were qualified in a deposition to do environmental, because that's where they're going to come at you.
I think that's completely reasonable.
All right, and page 8. Letter O, if approved for funding, the business must have a current disaster preparation and a resiliency plan reviewed and approved by the Port Arthur EDC.
Question?
Yeah, since when did we become experts on that?
We are not experts. I am absolutely not saying that we are experts. What I am saying is that we have to see that they have some plan to be able to survive the things that we go through here.
Well, the building would be to code.
Yeah, but just because a building is to code doesn't mean that they have a plan to survive if a hurricane comes around. What is your economic plan? Like, what are you going to do with your business to be able to outlast natural disasters? That is something that is very common to ask for in economic practices. And it helps the businesses to get into that mindset. It doesn't take a whole lot to come up with a resiliency plan.
Well, I mean, all right.
We're trying to make sure that we've
Well, no, I
got
understand what
lasting
you're saying,
impact.
but in the financials and everything else, if something is so marginal, are we actually going to fund it? Because, all right, what's enough resiliency to you? 90 days, 120 days, 180 in cash to operate?
I'd probably say a 90-day plan would be sufficient. because it shows that they've actually got a plan. That's really what I'm going after, is to make sure that they have a plan.
I can have a plan without cash to survive. So
Are
I
you
think my
wanting?
question's valid.
I'm not saying that it's not, but I'm trying to see what it is that you're looking for. Are you looking for there to be a number of days for that resiliency plan?
Well, I would like if company A comes and submits an application and they get down to that and they go, what do you mean? That it isn't an arbitrary pick out of the sky number.
No.
Director Albright, I understand your question. Two things that I just want to add to that. One, we would be assisting them in putting that plan together if they don't already have one on file. Two, we would be following a template that has been provided to us by both the IEDC and the TEDC that would just go step by step. So it would be mostly filling in information that they would have on hand. And like I say, if they already have one, then they wouldn't need our assistance. It would just be submitted along with the rest of the application. But on the off chance, especially a small business hasn't even gotten to that point, we will be assisting them in just populating that template. And of course, the board would still see that before we move forward with the project.
That's that on that one. On the which one was the 40% and 300,000? The infrastructure,
Yes,
which
sir.
would be bedrock. Why isn't that stated in it?
Why is it stated there?
No, why isn't it?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said.
The 40%, the 300,000, and then under the investment edge, the 20% and 500,000. That's not in writing anywhere in these.
It's not what?
In writing,
It's in the,
under qualifications, capital investment requirements, the business must commit to making a minimum capital investment in infrastructure facilities or equipment upgrades that directly support industrial or economic expansion. The investment amount must meet or exceed the threshold set by the program, ensuring a significant impact on the business operations and local economic development.
it's further down.
Tell me where, because I'm happy to be wrong.
It's under incentive structure. What page is that? On page 4,
All right, which one are we on?
on Bedrock. May I assist you? Oh, there you go.
Bottom of page 4, sir.
All right. And it's the same with the other?
Yes, sir, it's under
Okay.
incentive structure.
All right, didn't see it. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
I just have a comment. I love this. It looks very good. Just given some of my experience, I think that this is just very well developed. And I just have a question about, I'm assuming there's been some research conducted locally. How much traction do you think some of the smaller scale programs will get once we kind of formalize and release them? I guess maybe I could phrase it differently in that, and feel free to speak, Mr. Stokes, if you see fit, but how many businesses maybe have we had to turn around because they aren't the big fish that meet the larger policy?
Almost all of them.
Okay.
I have 7 or 8 big fish that are, that I'm trying to walk through and see. They come to us through site selection. And like I said, those are years of process if you get chosen. One thing, and this isn't specifically answering your question, but I feel like it's a really good time to give this little tidbit. One of the things with our big fish projects is that, not always, but often, you've got this big umbrella company that everybody knows. It's a big conglomerate. Then they come in and they say, hey, we've got X project that we would like to land. Your city is one of our sites that we've identified as a possibility. Okay, great. Well, you first of all think, well, everybody in the world knows that corporation, like, why would they need our money? Like, there's no gap there. Like, they have billions and billions of dollars. That's not exactly the case. So yes, the company is humongous. Everybody knows them. Yes, they have billions of dollars. But each year they have a section of that corporation that presents projects. There's a pot of money. Usually it's somewhere between $5 and $10 million. Depending on the size of the company, sometimes it can be a lot lower than that. But they'll have X amount of projects that get to bid for this one pot of money. So I have a prospect right now. They are competing against 19 other projects in their corporation. Only one project gets selected. So only one project out of all of those things, out of all of the sites, out of everything that is being worked on, can get that pot of money and be funded. So when we're competing for site selectors to choose us for these projects, we submit our RFIs. A lot of times we put a lot of effort into it and we go along down the road, but in the end of it, we wind up losing it, not because we weren't the best site, but because that project could not prove that it had the best ROI for that company. Some other project in that line of 19 other projects came up with maybe 40% ROI, and this guy came around with 17. There's nothing in the world that we can do about that other than offer the best incentive package that we possibly can, which is why we strive to do that. But having said all of that, we put in all this work for these big fish. Sometimes they actually do pan out, but it takes a very, very long time. So this impact incentive is fabulous. Everything that is legally available to us, we can do under that incentive program. But probably 90% of the people that come to us, they're not that big, and they're not going to qualify for something that needs that much help. It's not that broad. So in order for us to make sure that we are showing the activity that is truly going on, but nobody else can see because it's so confidential, then that's why we're looking at these very targeted programs. It helps us to continue to be active in the community, to actually help smaller businesses. It's just not as stringent as that impact is going to be because it doesn't hit as many markers. They're just going to have to do their investment for their equipment or their land or whatever, their capital investment. They're just going to have to do job creation, or they're just going to have to do infrastructure. Being able to focus our efforts that way really opens us up to be able to help a lot more people. And they're typically smaller, so we're not draining all of our funds in doing that. Any other questions?
All right, thank you so much.
you.
As stated before, I love your programs, and I hope that we're very successful in implementing those down the line. Next, we have communications. Mr. Stokes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Call your attention in your binder to the section tabbed Communications. There's 3 items that I want to go over with you this evening. In mid-January, the 14th specifically, the Greater Chamber of Commerce for Port Arthur will be having its annual banquet. We will be sponsoring at the table level, so we certainly hope that your schedule will permit you to join staff for that event. So all the information is there on your flyer in terms of scheduling and timing. Next, towards the end of January, will be the annual Economic Forecast Luncheon, sponsored by the Southeast Texas Economic Development Foundation in conjunction with its subsidiary, the Regional Economic Development Initiative, or READY for short. Keynote speaker for that event will be Dr. Mark Tautzer, Chief Economist for Real Estate Center at Texas A&M University. Again, we will have a table at this event, and again, if schedule permits, we certainly welcome as many of the board as can possibly attend with your schedule. And then lastly, the proposed schedule of your regular meetings for next year, including your annual meeting, which will take place on the 14th of January. So those dates will be sent out to you. Just wanted to make sure you also had them in hard copy as well. And Mr. President, that takes care of communications.
Everybody good on that? Go right ahead with your report.
Okay. There's a couple of items for you this evening. First of all, I just want to give you an update on an economic development project that was brought to your attention last month. Regrettably, one of our presenters tonight did not appear, but I do want to elaborate on that particular project, what we're calling the Whitehaven Estate on Lakeshore Drive. We've continued to have dialogue with the proprietor of that particular project. We are very excited to present to you some options that we believe will allow us to move forward with the project. That's okay. I'm always left out. Thank you. Give you a second to just go over what was presented to the proprietor and his team in terms of ways that we can move forward on this project. Going to, in a few minutes, call upon Deputy Mueller to give you some additional background information. But at a big picture level, we feel that with the board's agreement, that we can sit down with the owner of this particular project and come up with a program that allows us to move forward in a way that allows them to maximize their return on investment on the project, minimize our exposure, yet at the same time, and most importantly, spur activity downtown in conjunction with our overall contribution to downtown revitalization. So again, let you take a minute to review that, and then I'll toss it over to Deputy Mueller in case you have any questions or want more background information. Deputy Mueller, if you would just provide a little bit more background information, please.
Sure. Board members, if there are no questions on this, I'll just briefly give you an overview or update. This is a project that has approached the EDC for the Whitehaven Estate over on Lakeshore Drive. It is a renovation project, and we are considering all ways that we can possibly help this project because of the fact that it is a downtown project. It is in our historical district, so we are exploring those different ways and are willing to work with the entity that is looking to renovate that project. So if you have any questions, I welcome any.
Yes, reading through this, are you going for grants and tax credits first before anything else?
Versus funding through the EDC, you mean?
Correct, yes.
Well, we're going to look at all of those things basically at the same time. So we are going to try and see what we can achieve as far as new market tax credits as well as historical tax credits by way of liaising that for them, or with them rather. But at the same time, also, if there is an opportunity for us to, as an EDC or the city, to get involved with any type of incentive or assistance, we're going to look at those as well.
Thank you.
I have a question. What, I guess, sets this entity apart as one that we would want to work with on something that is kind of technically outside of the scope of our formal and focused kind of incentive offerings? What, what sets this entity apart, number one? And then number two would be, is there an amount that we have in mind that we wouldn't want to exceed if we were to truly proceed with assisting with this investment in renovation?
So to answer your first question, we are looking at the economic impact and benefits to the city being downtown revitalization, historic landmark revitalization, creation of new markets, where as right now, that is currently a blighted area. The entire downtown is considered to be blighted. So we do want to put a lot of focus in helping revitalize the downtown by different means. So we're considering this project as one of those. It also will increase the surrounding property value, attraction of new business and residential movement, and enhancement of quality of place for Port Arthur. So this is a little of an extraordinary project. You are correct, it doesn't normally fit within our industrial type projects, which is why we may not be able to offer a very large incentive. The number we don't really have yet, we don't really have a focused number. It would be based on basically their capital investment and their property taxes, our return on investment as far as property taxes and the surrounding impact, rather than job creation and the larger capital investment that we normally see. So our investment would be minimal, if any, but we are at least trying to offer resources and the liaising of getting this to spur some movement downtown.
And then my last question would be, so if another entity were to approach the EDC, would the same level of consideration and scrutiny be placed upon, say, for instance, another business that came or another individual that came and they purchased a blighted or a building downtown that's obviously blighted, may be eligible for some type of historical labeling? Would they be eligible to come to the EDC and request something similar?
I would say yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? So my question, because I missed the initial deal on this, we're not looking to necessarily invest EDC funds. We're trying to just help them get the project done. Is that my understanding, or am I wrong?
Actually, both of those. We are, like I said, exploring the options that may be available to them. So we are helping them get it done, but also trying to see if at all we can offer some type of incentive.
There will be no real type of return on investment.
There will be as far as economic impact to the surrounding area.
There's really nothing around there, though.
Well, the eventual economic impact to the area is what we're looking at.
Okay.
Mr. President, I would just add, as an overall catalyst to our plans and desires for revitalizing downtown, anything along this particular lines, and Secretary Jacobs, as you said, a similar type of project as well. If in fact we can see that it is going to contribute positively to that overall revitalization, then it serves our purposes to at least sit down and see what it is, if anything, we can do. Setting this particular project aside, there is also the ancillary aspect that this particular client deals with a great deal of the larger firms that have settled here in Port Arthur and that we will continue to try to attract to Port Arthur. So in the long run, there is a partnership aspect. Can we put a dollar value on that right now? No. But we can sit down and eventually calculate, well, what if we aren't attracting those, to use Mrs. Palmer's words, big fish? What happens if there is not an entity focused upon that in conjunction with our focus upon it? So yes, it's not quite, as Deputy Mueller said, the traditional aspect, but in this particular case, we're looking at the intangible aspects in terms of adding up that return on investment.
I have another comment, just based on something you just said, Mr. Stokes. I don't want to go too far out there with saying this, however, I do think it's important that if we are going to start considering projects such as these, that we have some true guardrails and structure in place, because this is setting a precedent, right? It's setting a precedent to kind of operate outside of what our focus is, and that leaves a lot of room from what, at least in my opinion, from what's been described thus far, it sounds pretty subjective at this point. And I just want to make sure that the EDC as an entity is equipped with what's necessary to be able to stand before the community and be like, we are being as objective as possible with accepting, reviewing, considering any other offers such as these, because we don't want any old Joe Blow from, wherever to come in the name of downtown revitalization coming to us for money, when under any other circumstance, they would not even be considered.
Certainly. Obviously, Mrs. Palmer has something to contribute. Before you get to that, let me just say that implementation of those guardrails, to use the term you use, will come in conjunction with you all, because nothing is going to end up at 4th Street for them to consider unless you all have taken it under consideration. So a great deal of the feedback that we would eventually get from the board will help us establish those guardrails as we go forward. But I do acknowledge what you're saying and appreciate it, and we'll put those in.
I just have some clarification. The reason that this project is first even being considered is because they have the appropriate NAICS code. Otherwise, we would not be having a conversation with somebody that we cannot legally incentivize. So there's first and foremost. If we're talking about just any person coming along and doing some kind of downtown revitalization, we have to have the appropriate NAICS code to be able to engage in any kind of incentive conversation. That's our first guardrail. There's not really anything we can do to get around that legally. So that, I would hope, would give you some security. And the amount hasn't been determined because while Deputy Mueller is explaining correctly that we are looking at all of these things simultaneously, we have to identify, just like with any other prospect, where's the gap? So we can't say that we would offer X amount of dollars. We don't know what the gap is. So after we see about all of these other hopefully viable avenues and what they would be able to provide, then we can say, okay, well, now that we've identified the gap, we can hopefully quantify in some way what this ROI is going to be for us. So hopefully that gives you some security and some clarification on how that process would go.
That helps. I was just, for me, the gap that I currently personally have is if we're deviating from our normal approach, then at what points are those deviations? So as you just explained, we're not deviating and saying you don't have to align with the next code that's applicable for all the other types, right? I think I'm personally interested in understanding where else our approach for this aligns with our approach for any other incentive in terms of feasibility analyses and all those types of things.
It goes under the last one, which would be that capital investment, that investment edge. That's the program that they would qualify for because they don't have infrastructure or job creation as an available avenue. So we were strictly looking, as Deputy Mueller said, at their capital investment. So that's formally the program that we would be looking to implement.
Mueller, what is the project? I mean, I know what Whitehaven is.
Hold on.
I've got a quick question for the attorney. By discussing this project before it's moving even forward, shouldn't all this be in executive session and not out in the open? And I know it's not on to be an executive session for this meeting, but I kind of think that the conversation needs to be shut down.
I would agree. I think that since we're getting into some specific points on a specific project, this conversation should be held in executive session. Not to keep anybody from ultimately learning anything, but just because there will be, there's information that needs to be imparted that everybody in the public does not necessarily need to know. And we can, just because it's not on the agenda, we could still adjourn it into executive session for this meeting.
Does anybody else have any questions? If not, I
If
think
you
we
got
just
you
ought
got
to
any
move
more
on.
specific questions about it that we need to discuss later on, or can we move on? What we're gonna do, if we want to go ahead and just move and continue this discussion as a part of our executive session concerning this development, okay? Mr. Stokes, if you would, just continue with your report, please.
Okay,
Thank you.
no problem. Takes us to item B under my report, bylaws update. Very long story short, the thing that is not yet ready is the redlining and the updating of the Code of Ethics by my math. So, attorney, please correct me if I'm wrong. So my understanding of where that stands is that there's still a body of work to be done to get the Code of Ethics redlined, updated, provide it to you all so that you can review the proposed changes. And my understanding is that that revision, the draft, the redlining, will be provided to you before Christmas so that you have time to review it ahead of your regular meeting in January. If I've misstated any of the timeline, please
You're
chime in.
absolutely correct, Director, CEO Stokes. The problem is coming, I am not the most proficient user of technology such as Microsoft. We have Terry's, CEO Stokes' red line version. We have our red line version. And in order to create one document, those have to be merged. And there is a way to do it. I simply have not, and on Mondays I typically work from home. I have not been able to do that today, or we would have had it here. So I'll be in the office tomorrow, and that my assistant can merge the two documents. Once that's done, it's just a simple matter of making sure that his red lines appear in one way, mine appear another, and I have a couple more additions to make for things that were not completed in the original document that we're working off of. So the delay has been, at least for this meeting, my inability to make Microsoft do what I want it to do, though, because I don't know the magic password or whatever.
I have one question. What was the problem of the code of ethics that was placed in our bylaws dated for April 2022? Was it not thorough enough or not information?
The code of ethics for the update was that this board would adopt the City of Port Arthur's code of ethics. There were questions during the meeting over that from you, Director Raymond, and a couple of other people about specific things that you felt should have been in there that were not in there, some nepotism language and that sort of thing. During that meeting, CEO Stokes printed out the ordinance that is the City of Port Arthur's Code of Ethics. We read through that quickly here and found that there were some problems with that document in that there were paragraphs that ended with no period and about half the sentence missing, that sort of thing. And so we have been working to get the original document from the City of Port Arthur so that we could see what was supposed to be in those incomplete paragraphs. And then there are certain things in that document that would apply to a city council that do not apply to this board.
Okay, I understand the question of the code of ethics that was updated recently, but again, I'm going back to our old bylaws.
Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Code of ethics that was dated April 2022. What was wrong with the wording in that particular bylaw?
That was a little bit before my time. I can't tell you that anything was wrong with that wording. I just know that when you had your workshop with Mr. Zeck on the bylaws and the policies and procedures, he felt that it was more expedient, and I guess it was voted on by everyone or agreed upon by everyone, to adopt the City of Port Arthur's Code of Ethics as a provision of the Policies and Procedures Manual rather than as a separate part of the bylaws. And so that's the change. Now, as to qualitatively evaluating the content of the 2022 Code of Ethics, that is not something I can do right now because I haven't done that.
And I can't speak to the legal aspects, but just looking back and remembering, it was Attorney Zeck's opinion in his research that the set of Code of Ethics that you're referencing, Director Raymond, mirrored the City of Port Arthur's with obvious changes, City Council, Board of Directors, so forth and so on. It was his opinion, again, right or wrong, that can't turn back the clock, that if in fact this body was going to have a document that was mirroring the governing body's document, and then the governing body in July of 2023 voted a new document, thus replacing their old one, then Attorney Zeck, as Attorney Red just said, thought that with most simplicity to continue on in a particular theme, this body should just simply adopt this new Code of Ethics since they were using the city's previous Code of Ethics as their template. I don't think that was saying anything was quote unquote wrong with the Code of Ethics. It was just one attorney's thought process that based on research seems that they would just continue on using as their guide, as their footprint, what this governing body has put into place since they were doing that before. And as Attorney Red said, that was a little bit before our time, and I had no reason to question that.
And the reason, if I can interrupt,
Sure.
The reason for doing that is that if you have two separate documents that say the same thing, and the City of Port Arthur updates its document, makes any significant changes, their document is now going to be different than the one that is adopted by the board. By changing the wording around a little bit to say that you adopt the City of Port Arthur's Code of Ethics, any change to that document immediately becomes effective change for your document as well, because you're using the same document. But some of the titles and the way you refer to people is changed because obviously you don't call anybody a councilman here, you call them a board member, and that sort of thing. So it's a way of keeping the two documents in sync without having to have separate action each time a change is made.
So just to reiterate, and again, please, Attorney Red, correct me if I'm wrong, that revision and red line will be provided to you very soon, certainly before the Christmas holiday, to provide you time to review it in advance of your January regular meeting. Next item is quick update on the youth employment program. Directors, you took that matter up at your last regular meeting. There was some feedback provided to you from you in terms of things that you wanted updated. So where things stand this evening is that staff has reviewed the notes and the recordings from the last regular meeting, has begun implementing and updating the documents based on the corrections that you wanted to see in the YEP. In the commitment to enhance the program, the goal is to soon be distributing to you again before the Christmas holiday a preliminary draft that shows the things that you requested at the last regular meeting, along with a list of the career and technical education courses. Director Albright, you requested that, offered by the school district serving our Port Arthur residents. So we want to make sure that you have ample time to review that draft, provide any input, like I say, with the goal of bringing it back to you for the final time at your January regular meeting. Questions? And then lastly, in terms of leave for this month, all that I have planned happens to be this week. I will be out of the office Wednesday through Friday of this week, returning on Monday. In my absence, Deputy Miller will hold down the fort in my absence. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the floor back to you.
Thank you for the updates, Mr. Stokes. We'll now move to our non-consent agenda items. The first one is to review and discuss and possible action to approve the PAEDC's revised incentive program policies.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any questions?
Yes. I got one more question for you. Career creation incentive policy. Right now it's at 20, right?
Career creation is a 20?
20 employees minimum.
I believe so.
All right. My question's this. Except for our larger contractors, a large business in our area would be, let's say, 40 or 50 employees, okay? Well, they're not going to expand out 20, all right, unless it's maritime, okay? And what about 10, and I guess give me the reason against it?
I think that's just fine. All of these policies are up for feedback and changes. This is really like their first run through. So if you see things that need to be updated, I don't have any problem with that whatsoever. I think that's a really good observation. And especially after the presentation that I gave, I agree with you. So, I mean, we can lower it to 10, we can lower it to 5. It's whatever y'all are comfortable with for that particular incentive. Where is the bottom line? What's the minimum?
Well, and that's where you can sit there and debate tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 that you have on there. I mean, you could put this into a workshop. I mean, if we're just wanting to get some policy done, then, I say we stick a number and then see what happens down the road.
I concur. That honestly, that's really how you see where you get traction.
Yeah.
You try it, everything's trial. If it works, great, we stick with it. If times change and the temperature changes, then we adjust. I think that's something that should always be looked at. It's especially on an annual basis. That's what I did previously, was to make sure that I looked at my things regularly on an annual basis to just kind of evaluate, did this work the way that we wanted it to? If it didn't, let's adjust.
Well, since we haven't adopted it, I mean, what do we need to go down to 10 if I want to try to push that?
To what? To move what are we talking about?
You would just when you make the motion, just say.
Career incentive
The career.
strategies, or to move the career creation, to move the minimum of employees from 20 down to 10.
Okay. Just,
You would just make that a
in
part of your
motion.
motion, sir.
yeah.
Okay, well, I make a motion that we approve everything submitted to us except for and I just forgot what it's called again. Career incentive thing from 20 down to 10.
The motion would be that we would approve the incentive programs, making the correction in career creation from a minimum of 20 to a minimum of 10 employees, right? Yes. Okay, so that's our amended motion. And we still have our good first and second, so now let's vote. Any other questions? I'm sorry, any other questions? Any other questions? We good? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Our next one is a presentation. Discussion and possible action to approve a professional services agreement with CoStar for site selection database designated for internal use. Looks like Ms. Palmer is on her way back.
Oh, wow.
Michelle show tonight. All right. Let me get this up and then I will introduce our presenter. All right, I'd like to introduce Nolan Hess. He is from CoStar. He came in from Houston today to be able to give this presentation and to give some explanation of what we are looking at, why we're asking for this particular program, and then afterward we can discuss, whether it's you or me, whichever one, we can discuss what the pricing options are for this program.
Good evening, board members. Thank you all for having me out to review this with you. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about CoStar, us as a company, just give you a little bit of background information, how economic development councils utilize our research and analytics platform today, and just any questions you have, I'll do my best to address any and all. So bear with me. We are a comprehensive commercial real estate database firm. We are a research firm first and foremost. We are the largest research firm in the commercial real estate space, and among the largest regardless of kind of data type that is being aggregated, things like that. We've been around almost 40 years. We started as a platform that brokers would utilize for listing properties. We now track all commercial property, land included, on and off the market. So from an economic development standpoint, you guys would have visibility to not only what land is actively for sale in Port Arthur, but also the parcels that aren't currently for sale, and then also any commercial property beyond that as well. From a standpoint of working with economic development councils, we have extensive experience working with both on a national level, but also locally in Southeast Texas. We work with a number of the EDCs in and around Houston, Southeast Texas, so on and so forth. CoStar is the research hub at the center, and I believe you guys have the slides, but we have I say we have a multitude of online portals. LoopNet, that is under our umbrella, apartments.com, BizBuySell, 10X. All of the data that we track from those sites get aggregated into CoStar, and that's where, in addition to properties that are listed directly on CoStar, we have a comprehensive picture on what does the commercial real estate landscape look like in a given municipality, region, state, nation, even to an international level. We have a multifaceted research methodology. We have, it says 1,450 on that slide. We're actually up over 1,500 now. But in Richmond, Virginia, we have 1,500 researchers whose task on a daily basis is to update on listings, properties, tenants, property owners, contact information. That way, on a day-to-day basis, as you guys log in, you guys have the most up-to-date information on what did a given property sell for, who bought it, who's the true owner behind the LLC, among other things. In addition to that, we have a lot of in-market assets that we use for updating photos. We have a plane that flies over major and secondary markets to track what's under construction, in addition to our now extensive network of clients in the brokerage and commercial real estate communities, where we get updates from them directly on their projects and things like that that they have as well. We take all that information that we gather on a census level and then combine that with a number of different third-party data feeds. I'll show you a few screenshots here, starting with the next slide, but like Google supplies our maps, First American pulls in our public record information, Calibrate would be traffic count information, Newstar is going to be your demographic data. We do all of this in addition to our researchers and the economists that we have, so that our subscribers have consultant level information that you can use as you attract a potential big fish client, things like that. And more importantly, as you get requests for information, you can quickly act upon those things, because you'll know, hey, I need a 15-acre plot of land. You know, how many of those do I have? What parts of the area? Things like that, right? Or maybe I have a 12-acre plot, and there's another guy that has a 2-acre plot right next to it. And, you know, maybe he'd be open to selling, because the reality is with commercial real estate, a lot of those deals happen off market, and they, you know, it's our census level tracking and calling to get confirmed comps and things like that that gets you a clear picture on all aspects of who owns what properties and things like that. So from a login standpoint, there's a number of different modules, but from an EDC standpoint, a lot of folks are going to live primarily in our properties tab, and that would be, you can quickly choose between the different asset types. So if you want to look at only look at land for sale, if I want to see only industrial, if I want to see only flex, you can quickly adapt and get an idea on what's on the market in that asset type, or to that point, also what's off the market. Maybe I want to see what's currently under construction in my area, right? It's always good to know, is there a multifamily development coming up in a certain part of the city? That could be a population influx. It's something that you can use in your advantage as you're having those conversations, things like that. Every property that you then select is going to have a detailed property card with summary information, but beyond that, who's occupying the building, what changes have taken place in that property, past sales, depending on the loan type. If it's a commercial mortgage-backed security, we'll have some loan information and the financials on how that particular business is performing. Demographic information, so you can get a scope on a 2, a 5, a 10-mile radius. And then the beauty of it is you can run analytics based on, all right, I have these 3 different parcels. Let's look at what is the price per square foot at X, Y, and Z, right? And so it gives you a lot of flexibility as you look at the market for Port Arthur at large. In addition to that, because we track tenants and who owns the properties, you can get an idea on which ownership groups are deploying capital in your market, right? Who are the people actively building or buying land or buying property in Port Arthur? And with that, because we track for true contact information. You'll have the registered owner, but also our target is always the true owner information, like the actual contact information for whoever owns that LLC. And I don't know that I have this in a slide, but the beauty of it is, as a CoStar subscriber, you also have access to our researchers to submit requests for information on a property as well. So, I mean, we're not infallible. Sometimes I've seen one where we have the LLC, but we haven't gotten the true owner information. You'll have a direct link to a CoStar researcher. You send them a quick message and you say, hey, I need the true owner information for this plot of land, right? And we'll make that call for you. Beyond that, because again, we're tracking tenants in the marketplace as well. It's a way that, oh, shoot, I'm so sorry. There we go. Different EDCs use it to track who are the top employers in the area, track tenant move-ins, tenant move-outs, right? Who has expiring leases coming up, just different ways to look at the economic activity that's going on in the market. And then from a casting a wider net, being more proactive, like it sounded like there's kind of 8 big fish that you guys are hunting right now. It's how do we expand that net? How do we get contact information at a larger scale? Well, just like you can search properties on a manufacturing basis, on an industrial basis. When we first met with Michelle, one of her targets was, we have employers in oil and gas. How do we diversify and bring in employers that aren't necessarily as specifically tied to that sector, right? Well, we can run searches based on an industry type. We can run searches for companies that are growing and growing rapidly. We rate that based on locations that have been added in a 24-month space, things like that, right? So you can search for, all right, I need a manufacturing, I'm looking for manufacturing, I'm looking for a regional company, and I want companies that are actively growing, right? And then let's find the contact information for those types of businesses, things like that. So from a building out a bigger pipeline, which it sounded like that's one of the targets based on the conversation from earlier, our data has helped EDCs accomplish that aim of having a clear view of what the market looks like that you have currently, and then also building out a larger list of targets as you prospect. And just the same as with portfolio owners, things like that, with companies, we strive to get the true contact information for directors of real estate or CEOs or whatever company it might be. And then this last 3, this is just, I would be your guys' main point of training for CoStar. I believe the proposal that was put forward would be to just have Michelle subscribe. But between myself, Rebecca, we would be the local training and kind of help you guys launching resource. And Cody leads our Southeast research team based at our research facility in Virginia. That's CoStar in a nutshell. Questions? I know I was moving a little quickly there.
Yes. How often, and I'm just going to go off of top employers in your market, how often does this information get updated?
We update it on a perpetual basis. Now, it would be specific to when the last time, I mean, we have researchers calling into Beaumont regularly. If there is outdated employer information, it's possible that we haven't called recently, and that would, but we update the system on a perpetual basis.
Okay, let's say they're a researcher. Are they actually calling Valero Energy Corporation and going, hey, how many people do y'all employ?
Well, we use the same system that our subscribers use. So yes, I mean, we have a point of contact that we reach out, and we also scrub different internet sites and things like that for contact information as well.
Okay, and so let's go to Chili's.
Okay.
150 employees.
I don't know how many Chili's are in Beaumont off the top of my head.
Oh, you're
I'm
in
sorry,
Port Arthur,
Port
and there's
Arthur.
one,
Yeah,
and it's closed.
gotcha.
But even before it was closed, would you imagine a Chili's would have 150 employees?
No, I would agree with that.
All right, thank you.
Jill, I'd like to ask you a question on this. That was a good presentation. But I'd like to know how this would interact and how you would use this information. Because we're not in the real estate business.
Technically, no. But I am. I have to have up-to-date real estate information to be able to fit prospects with sites. If I don't have site information, it is extremely difficult for me to do my job. Up to this point, being in this place, I haven't had site information, and it has been very difficult to do my job. So whenever I go to look for information on, like RFIs will ask you, they tell you exactly what they need. I need this many acres, I need a building with this many square feet. Where do I go to look? I mean, I don't have a resource to just go out there and look. I have to try to look through Google or look through this or some other, just random site, call people, see if realtors that I have connected with have any information. It's very piecemealed. CoStar gives me the ability to look at a whole lot of stuff at one time. It also gives me help. So I can call a researcher and tell them, this is what I'm looking for, and I need you to help me find such and such, or I need you to verify this, that, or the other. There's many times that I need to be able to reach out to the owner of the property to get information. I can't find it. The CAD isn't updated. I don't know where to reach them. CoStar has researchers on hand all the time to be able to do that. So those are some of the main ways that I would initially use this. The more that I learn about it, of course, the more that I'll delve into other capabilities it has.
This is on future projects. I mean, projects that possibly will come to us.
Well, yes, but I have projects literally right now that I need to see. They're looking for a site. I can't tell them whether or not I have that kind of property available. So as soon as I get plugged into CoStar, I can put in what it is I'm looking for, and immediately I'm going to be able to get results and tell them. Because one of the deciding factors for this company to land in Port Arthur that I'm speaking of is a building with X amount of square feet. They don't want to do a new build. They want something that's existing. If I don't have that, I can't land them. Right now, I don't know where to get that information reliably.
Okay. And I don't want to keep beating it, but you do know we have commercial real estate companies in town.
Yes, but they don't have, what I've run into with commercial realtors is that they have their listings.
I see this as different than just a commercial. I see it.
Yeah, I mean, they're specific to what they have listed. They're not going to market or tell me about things that they don't have listed. Go ahead.
Just as a clarification, we are not a brokerage. We are where brokers list their property, right? So that's just a clarification on that.
They pull from so many different resources that it just expands our ability to look at what is available. We've had somebody come and say, hey, we've got all these empty buildings and I want them identified. Well, how are we supposed to do that? Or we drive around? I mean, and not to be sarcastic or sassy, like literally, I was sitting back here thinking, well, how in the world am I going to do that? I don't have the software. So
I get it. It's to make your job easier, and that's what we want, for things to move expediently as fast as possible, even though everything moves slow in economic development. My question is this. What are you looking to do? I see there are a number of, there's 3 different ways to purchase this on the very last page. What are you looking at? Are you trying to try it out for a year? Have you already used it before? Know it's going to be good for you? You want to try it? What are you wanting to do with this software?
At minimum a year, of course, or I wouldn't even be bringing it. I haven't used it before, so I don't know. I don't know whether it would be best to go ahead and get that best deal of a 3-year contract, or if we just need to say, you know what, we'll go for the higher price, we'll just take our 1 year, give it a shot, and then reevaluate after that. I'm fine with that. I really just wanted to present y'all with options. I always try to get the best deal possible, and for them, they did whittle it down some, but in order for them to get a better deal and get approval on that from their supervisors, they had to go with extending the amount of time that we would commit. So it's completely honest, I'm indifferent on which option you choose. I just want a yes.
Gotcha. Any other questions about
And you
this?
did say that's total training and all.
Yes, yeah. There's no training fees.
Any other questions?
All right, I make a motion that
Thank you for
we
your
approve the
presentation.
CoStar agreement for 1 year.
It's been moved and second that we would approve the CoStar agreement for 1 year. Any other questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. All right. All right, 3. On consent item agenda number 3, review and discuss and possible action regarding monthly expenditures, including expenses under $5,000 and the last 2 years of checks with their backup submitted, excluding payroll.
I have a point of order on this one. I requested this information. I didn't request it to review and discuss it. I requested this information.
So you did not want an agenda, and you wanted this, you actually.
No, I just asked for the last 2 years of checks with their backup, excluding payroll.
That clarification.
Yeah, you would just remove it from the agenda and duly noted what you're looking for. Is that what you're looking for? on the
Yes,
next
sir.
one as well?
And then
All right, so, excuse me, Director Albright had requested these additional agenda items, but he's asked for those items to be removed from our agenda. That's agenda item number 4 and number 5, and we're going to allow those to be removed from the agenda, and we'll move to agenda item number 6, which is, see, oh yes, I'm sorry, 3, 4, and 5. 3 was a directive. Thank you. Number 6, review, discuss, and possible action regarding the installation of a buzzer system to grant access to the Port Arthur Community Credit Union members at the Press Building. May I have a motion, please?
So move.
Moved and second. Ms. Raymond.
Okay, before I brought this agenda to the meeting, I was trying to get this resolved. But I understand there's some issues regarding insurance and contracts and things of that sort. This has been going on for the last 2 years since they've been in the building, Port Arthur Community Credit Union, and the problem is they don't have access. Where their office is located, the door next to their office is locked. They don't have access to allow their customers in and out. The last time we was here, the last time I talked with them was doing our open house, and they still having issues. So we thought about probably a buzzer where they can let their customers in and out of the building. The door will still be locked, but they will buzz that customer in and out, and possible a monitor where, like, sometimes when you go to the bank, the monitor, the clerk can see you, and they can look at that person, see who it is, and allow that person to come in. So again, Mr. Stokes brought to my attention about insurance issues and contracts. So I'm bringing to the board to see what type of solution we can come up for this credit union, since this is an ongoing issue.
Okay,
regarding
Mr.
the
Stokes,
situation.
you want to explain to us what the issue is then?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President and Director Raymond. Thank you for putting this on the agenda. As you accurately stated, we've had this conversation with the credit union since they were getting ready to sign their contract. For those that were not on the board, the issue back then, much as it is now, is that both legal as well as our insurance wanted there to be one singular point of entry in order for there to be security in the overall facility. As you all know, you've all been in the press building, there are no locked doors to get to the second floor. You either have a stairway or you have the elevator. So the concern back then was that, well, if we leave the doors unlocked or otherwise provide some measure of access, then we would need the credit union to simply just take responsibility for the liability. That was explained to them both by our legal at the time as well as police, just trying to make sure that the overall facility stayed secure, because we do have other tenants beyond the credit union. So back then, the requested solution was that for their particular lobby, for those particular side doors, to just provide a guard that would have access to the doors at all time, and he or she would be, on behalf of the credit union, the monitoring entity. That was refused by the credit union unless we wanted to take on that cost. As landlord, you don't typically take on the cost. You may approve the tenant making alterations, but you don't necessarily pay for the alterations yourself. And there were other suggested ways of accommodating, including the so-called buzzer. We got nowhere. Our legal proceeded with putting together the contract that they signed, which does stipulate that those doors will be locked at all time. So certainly if we alter that, then we would just put them under, we would tear up that contract and just put a new one together. And that's certainly, the board can have that pleasure to do that. Then we just have to deal with our insurance company that back then did not want to deal with the liability, and in recent communiques, without point blank saying it, I don't think they will underwrite if we decide to make that move. Again, we can always find another entity that would at perhaps a higher cost, but again, as I mentioned to Director Raymond earlier this afternoon, one of our sticking points is that the credit union would like us to absorb these additional costs. One of the things that we have not been provided, beyond the obvious convenience, I'm not arguing that, but we haven't been provided any data that shows the extent to which they're losing customers because folks have to walk around the corner that's 50 feet to the front entrance. We've not provided anything other than the inconvenience, which, again, I'm not arguing, but we have to weigh providing that convenience, because it would be on our nickel at their request, versus the liability. Because once you're in, you now have access to any of our tenants, because there is no way to lock them out. We can't undo the stairway. We can't all of a sudden put in doors. And yeah, perhaps you could have an emergency thing to shut the elevator down, but doesn't prevent you from just taking the stairway up. So those are the dilemmas that we're facing. We want them to be able to function as a business, just like any of our other tenants in there. But where we stand in December of 2024 is that they are requesting something that they requested in October of 2022 and refuted and basically turned down every suggestion that was made. And here we are. The doors are still there.
Question is our front door open all the time, or does it have a buzzer or in
It
and
is
out?
open during the business hours. Because by law, we have to have it open.
No, you could have a buzzer on it by law.
Well, yes, but
Because
it's
what you're saying, I'm
monitored, I should
concerned
say.
is the safety issue, because whether the people come through the front door or the side door, they can still come in and go in. And
That is correct.
so I don't know that,
Monitored is what the word that I should have used. Yes, it's opened, but we presently do not have any monitoring of that side door.
you have monitoring of the front
Of the
door.
front. And every tenant comes through that front door. It's a deterrent. And we recently had a situation where another site for the credit union, not with a whole lot of details, had an incident. And in responding to that incident, police were sent over to the press building because their concern was, well, if there's something going on at one of these facilities, maybe there's something going on another. One of the things that the responding officers were pleased with was that unlike this other facility, wherever it happens to be in Port Arthur, they liked that there was just a single point of entry. And I could only take that to mean that maybe there was another point of entry at this other facility. Neither here or there, the point is that we just need to make sure that if we proceed to provide this convenience, we haven't been provided any data that it is really impacting their ability to maintain their customer base. Again, neither here or there. We just need to make sure you understand that we will absorb the cost as well as the liability.
You discuss the cost with them incurring the cost? Has there been a discussion with them since this came up?
Like I say,
From
this was an original request back in '22 when we
Has there
opened.
been a discussion since then?
Not a conversation involving legal, whereas back in '22, legal was at the table as a part of the conversations. We haven't been able to get beyond, regardless of the costs, and even if this board decided to go ahead and take on the costs, what are we going to do about the liability? And that's not
I don't truly understand the difference in the liability of being able to come through that side door if you had a monitor there and having an open front door. I'm not clear.
They're not requesting a monitor, man, they're just requesting a buzzer that
Somebody
unlocks the
said
door.
monitor.
Yeah, it said
Somebody
monitor.
said monitor.
Yeah, I said monitor
Oh.
and the
But
buzzer.
then there needs to be a discussion with them about that. Now, and maybe it's not a board action yet. Maybe it's a entity discussion to see if that's something you all can work out. Because I think from a liability perspective, that if from the front door, I don't see where that's any greater liability, because unless you have an armed guard at the front door, that there's any greater liability doing that than coming through the side door. If you had, I think you should have a buzzer on the front door like you do here. Right. And that's what I think. But I don't think liability right now, because you can come in anyway. Where you come in, if you're concerned about people on the second floor, is insignificant.
And I don't want to try and get in Attorney Red's sandbox. All I'm going on is what was stated to the client in terms of acceptability when we opened the building and they moved in and signed their contract. Whether or not there's alternatives, that was.
The question I have is that, I'm sorry.
What's the legal part of this?
The legal part of this is I'm sorry, I always forget. That's right. You look at the more access points that you have to a building, especially one that is unmonitored, you increase exponentially your potential liability because no one is looking at, somebody could come in with the torch through an unmonitored building. That's a kind of an extreme example. Through an unmonitored door and set the building on fire. That person would not be able to come through a monitored door because we would presume that whoever is monitoring the door would decline to grant them access. But if you have any door that is unmonitored, which I think is what they're proposing, as I understand it, is you would simply add a buzzer to the door that someone, pushes the button and the door opens, or someone, inside flips the switch to let the door open without looking to see who it is that's coming in. Another problem with unmonitored access is that it's very rare that just one person will come in on that open door.
The thing it is, they're about a foot away from the door. I mean, a foot away from the door, glass is there. They're the one asking for it. They're the ones that would be robbed. We wouldn't have nothing to do with anything. And one more thing about this legal thing, I've been in that building many times and walk anywhere as I want, and no one knows I'm in that building.
Yes, sir.
As right now.
Yes, sir. I understand. But it's my understanding that the door that they're requesting the buzzer for opens into the main lobby, not into the credit union itself. So that if the door opens simply into the credit union, that would be a much easier situation for a buzzer to be added, because the credit union would monitor its own access through that door, and they would not be able to come into the rest of the building. They would simply have access to the credit union's suite or however many rooms they have or whatever.
So let's just make a suggestion, because we're beating a dead horse.
Yes,
and we're running around chasing our tail right now. How about we just have CEO, attorney, and the bank sit down one more time, present the monitor, present those things, and see how we can make this work. If it can work, or can't. If it doesn't work out, come back and we'll have another discussion. But I believe this is something that we can that can be worked out outside of this long discussion that we're having.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
One more thing.
Come on, add your
We
thing.
just passed monies to upgrade our monitoring system, its cameras, sound system, and I think it applied to this building as well as to the data camera. One outside this building, the building, system available at the.
I'll answer your question, Ms. Raymond. We did do upgrades to this building only. We have not done upgrades to the press building from what was originally installed there. The monitoring system that we have there observes or catches images of the open area where that door that is being referenced opens to. It does not necessarily point towards the door exactly. To do that, we would have to install an additional camera. And just to give you all a little history, if I may, whenever the credit union approached us, the office that they're in was not designed to be a bank or financial institution. While we're very excited that they did decide to come into the press building, and we're happy to have them there, it just so happens that there is a door adjacent to their office. It does not enter their office, it is next to their office, so someone does have to enter the building and then come into their office. While we're using the word liability, I think it's more of a safety issue that we're concerned with. There are several concerns that are presented with this, one being the lack of someone or video monitoring of that door and who enters in and out of that door, as well as it entices what I have seen as of right now, the way that their agreement states that door is not to be opened, but they do get up and open the door when people walk up to that door. So people are parking on that no parking zone, and there are concerns with the safety of those people as well. So there are several things, and while it's not completely we can look into the feasibility of a buzzer. We can perhaps talk to legal again and see. We would have to amend their contract to add in some stipulations that protect us if we do allow a buzzer. And I would also suggest that it be at the tenant's cost, as we do usually with all of our other tenants here, as well as the press building. If there are additions to their areas, they do take on that cost for additional things that they'd like. But we would have to get with legal and perhaps make an amendment to their contract if we were to allow it.
That would be required.
One thing for me, Mr. President, if you don't mind, with the attorney said a single entrance to the facility, a single entry. And that would, in my opinion, be the front entrance, being a single entrance with a camera, monitor, and having folks to come in. And if you work there, you could have a card to get in. But you could monitor everybody else who's coming in if you got a person physically there, as well as the buzzer, and then allowing folks to come in if they by appointment of wherever they're going. I think that in the time we live, it's probably a lot more liability to have that open access to the entire building than it would be to have a single entrance with a buzzer.
Mr. Director. All right, am I to assume that we are individually insuring these buildings ourselves? When does our renewal come up?
Annual basis, I'd have to defer to, because I think we're on different schedules for this building as opposed to the press building. It's not an umbrella
I
coverage.
couldn't give an exact date right off the top of my head. I'd have to look at it.
And we'll get
Whenever
you,
that renews, it comes before the board.
we'll get you the, pardon?
Whenever that renews, it comes before the board?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Only thing I see is you brought something up on one entrance. I would hate to see a fire on the opposite end of that building and they couldn't get in that building. Firemen.
Firemen will have, they usually have what's called a Knox box. Or
On that door.
there should be, because then if there's not one on that door, I don't think you're meeting code, because all access and egress points to a building must be accessible by emergency response personnel.
Make a motion. I'd like to make a motion. So I move that we, I guess, table any further discussion regarding this in lieu of a meeting that Director Holmes suggested that involves Mr. Stokes, legal, as well as whomever the key stakeholders are from the credit union to come up with a possible solution. But I don't think this is for us to decide at this point, just given the information that we have and don't have. So the motion would be for us to table this discussion in lieu of a meeting with the key stakeholders involved.
It's been moved and second to table this. All in favor?
Aye.
Number 7.
Sorry, I didn't.
What happened? Everybody just take. Right. Item number 7, review, discuss, and possible action regarding the status of implementing the CEO's high-level strategic plan. May I have a motion, please?
So
Second, Mr. LeBeau.
Yes, Mr. Stokes, I'd like to just probably put this to rest after 2 years. I was just wondering if we are ever going to get a high-level strategic plan, because that's what my understanding was, till this plan comes out, everything is really stagnant as far as everything that we have been doing for years.
I guess I would humbly ask if you could further define stagnant. What do you perceive as stagnant?
Well, at certain times you have said property not being sold, now is starting to sell. Well, let's just go back to high-level strategic plan, 2 years. You promised Ms. Holmes you was going to have it 4 or 5 months ago. You promised other board members you were going to have it May of '22, and we still haven't had the first word. So.
So let's set stagnant aside. I continue to work on this overall plan. I know it says implementation. There would never be anything implemented if this board has not approved it. And just this weekend, I was wrapping up the final summary of this particular section of the overall plan. It occurred to me that other than a couple of directors, notably President Anderson, Secretary Jacobs, have never been talked to or approached about an entrepreneurship program. So I got to thinking that before I spend a lot of my time and waste you all's time, I may need to double back and just find out if that is of interest. Specifically starting with yourself, Director LeBeau. Is that even of something of interest?
So you just was talking, I was talking high-level strategic plan, you're talking entrepreneurship. We're talking.
It says entrepreneurship program. I'm sorry, am I misunderstanding? Yeah. It says.
Oh.
7. Strategic plan.
Okay. So I'm answering 7 and 8. Forgive me, I jumped ahead. 8, it would simply be a chapter in number 7. So I'll come back to number 8, and as far as number 7, as quickly as I can possibly and humanly get it to you. Even if one of the things I've discussed with President Anderson that he's deliberating on in terms of taking it to the full board is just releasing it piecemeal, chapter by chapter, and then coming back and putting the whole thing together, since it will be a living document.
So do you have a date, time?
As you just have articulated, dates and times have been missed. So what I'm committing to this board is that it will be finished, it will be presented. Whether we do that in whole or piecemeal, that's a conversation that can be had another day.
You know, after 2 years, do you really think we need it? I mean, you're hiring people, we're going about other ways to do things, and here you are working on a high-level strategic plan.
Rest assured that anything that is being done is done in conjunction with that thought process and that vision, which in my mind has not changed since March of 2023 when the board gave me direction on that vision and the strategic priorities. So the fact that we're moving ahead does not preclude that there still needs to be a documentation of that vision, and that is what I'm working very hard to complete.
Anybody else questions or concerns? There's nothing to vote on in this particular item.
I just have a comment. Mr. Stokes, I think, I'm just going to speak for myself. I won't speak for anyone else, because we've definitely, as a group, in your presence here in workshop format, had multiple discussions about the strategic plan. I think we can all agree that it is while it is not a hard requirement of your role, right? It's not an actual deliverable that is coded into your contract. It is something that you brought forth that you would deliver. And I think it generated some excitement amongst us because we'd like to see what the vision is, what the strategy for the overall organization. I think it would aid in our understanding of our just kind of strategic operatives while we make some of the decisions that we make. Unfortunately, really hate to say this, but I'm disappointed in us not being able to have a tangible date by which I don't think, at this point, I don't think that's a ask that is too extreme. I think that's something that could be provided with a level of specificity, and I think that's something that you could hold yourself to for us, as well as for the community as a whole.
Secretary Jacobs, I don't necessarily disagree with you, and certainly a date can be applied. Understand and don't necessarily disagree with your disappointment. It will get done. You mentioned excitement. At one time I had that too. I said a couple of meetings ago, if I had known then what I know now, I'm not sure I would have ever uttered the words, but I did, and I'm committed. Simple as that. With or without excitement. Because as you articulated, it has to be done.
Anyone else? All right, agenda item number 8, review, discuss, and take possible action regarding the status of implementing of the entrepreneurship program at the press building. Have a motion.
Make a motion.
Moved in second, Mr. LeBeau.
Well, after the discussion there, I just hope the entrepreneurship program is different than the high-level strategic plan. That's it. That's all I have to say.
Anyone else?
Yes, sir. First, kind of hopping back to the other one. I'm fine piecemeal. Because some of this stuff, I mean, we're up and running on some stuff, you know, take the next bite of the pie, move forward. But on the entrepreneur program, I'd be curious to see how involved you want to get in it, and then let the board decide if that's something it actually wants to take on.
Would be a part of that overall presentation, yes, sir, because you all would have to approve any aspects of it, but the piecemeal might go a long way.
Else? Agenda item number 9, review, discuss, and take possible action regarding the renewal of a $1 million for 3-year granted to the City Parks and Recreation Department with the option to renew for an additional 3 years under Resolution 24-363. Motion.
So moved.
Been moved in second. Mr. LeBeau.
Yeah, we talked about this a couple of times, and all I was wanting to bring up, that this was not brought to the board. It was presented to us by the city manager and Parks Department. And the next thing we see, it was thrown in the budget. The budget was approved, and now we're stuck for 3 years for $3 million. Is that correct?
Give some clarity to that, because you know how that happened. I'm going to ask legal to give clarity to that.
City's ordinance did not require a second approval by this body in order for the second grant of the $3 million. It is self-effectuating, provided that 2/3 of the city council vote for a second 3-year period. So the way it was crafted by the city's legal, who wrote the ordinance and everything, the city's taking $3 million, $1 million a year for 3 years and devoted to this parks program. At the end of that first 3-year period, should the city want to do it for another 3-year period, there is one vote by the City of Port Arthur City Council, and if 2/3 of the council members present vote for the extension, then that extension occurs, and there's no way under that ordinance for this body to express an opinion or to say we don't wish to give you another $3 million, or to ask what happened to the first $3 million. The way it was created was that the City of Port Arthur City Council would decide whether or not they wanted another $3 million from us or from you.
That's fine. Well, why do you think that city even came over here and talked to us about it? And asked if we would renew it, if you want to look at the film.
I think that the person who came and made that presentation did not know that the ordinance was self-effectuating, because there was a presentation. If we're talking about the same presentation, there was a presentation a couple of meetings ago, and Director Albright even commented to the young lady from the Parks Department, it doesn't appear that we even have a dog in this fight, or that could be a paraphrase of what he said. And that was an accurate statement, because of the way the City of Port Arthur crafted the ordinance. They did not need to get an approval from this body for a second $3 million bike.
How many more times can they roll this?
That was it. The way I read it, there was one initial 3-year period, and then there is a optional second 3-year period.
Thank you.
One more thing, we had a committee to oversee this money last time, and then it was never taken care of. And I understand that they might have had some money that they didn't use. We need to check on that from last time. And this time, I think we need a committee to oversee this.
He actually shared with us that none of the monies from last time had been spent at all. They hadn't started on the project when they made the presentation in that meeting.
The time before I'm talking about. No, I'm talking about the time before.
From the initial time, none of the money's been spent. But even if they had, because of the way that the document was drafted, and correct me if I'm wrong, they could steal us blind. We can't do anything about it.
There's no oversight mechanism or oversight by this board to of the money that's taken from its accounts. It's simply it's like a kiss on the cheek when you're done.
Well, the only thing it was, we had one sheriff on the board. He was on that board to oversee it.
If the committee that is supposed to be overseeing this has not been effectuated by the City of Port Arthur, this board would be entirely proper in asking the city to take that step and to go ahead and get that board put together and get it rolling. Because just speaking as a taxpayer in general, I would definitely like there to be some oversight.
It's a simple act. I mean, you building parks, you building this, you're doing this, and I mean, you can figure it out real quick.
Yes, sir.
And
Yeah, but if there is any portion of that ordinance which has not been effectuated by the City of Port Arthur, it is entirely within this board's prerogative to request that unactivated process be activated.
Attorney Brett, in light of that, do they have to acquiesce? Do they have to agree to the formation of that oversight?
If the oversight committee is a part of the ordinance, or any ordinance that is a portion or relates to that, then yes. I haven't seen any other, so I can't comment on the contents of an ordinance I haven't seen. But so long as there is an ordinance adopted by the City of Port Arthur that says there will be a committee composed of X, Y, C, ABC, whatever, that will monitor or provide oversight of the expenditure of these funds, that committee has to be created. If it has not yet been created, any citizen of the city of Port Arthur could ask that be created in accordance with the city's own law.
So there was a lot of discussion, just for clarity, about that before we decided to do this for the second time, because this is actually the finishing of the second time that we've done this to have oversight. That was not written in any ordinance. As a matter of fact, it wasn't written anywhere. It should have been written somewhere, because we did have long discussion about it, but not going to beat a dead horse. It is not there.
If it's not in any ordinance, then it's still within the purview of this board to ask that some oversight mechanism be created. But other than raising the hue and cry, there's not really going to be any way to force the city to do that.
All right, agenda item number 10. Agenda item number 10. Review, discuss, and possible action regarding a contract with Mookie Marketing Group LLC for the administration of the Youth Employment Program. May I have a motion, please?
Make a motion.
It's been moved and second. Mr. LeBeau.
This was brought to my attention that the EDC has hired a past employee to do some work, I don't know what work, for amount right under $5,000, of course, $49.50. And this wasn't brought to the board, and I don't know if it was a contract. If it was a contract, then the CEO is using our attorney for something I feel like is not our responsibility. And this is Mookie Marketing, Renata Lee.
Mookie Marketing.
Mr. President, I would like to interject. If we are going to get into any specific details regarding how much she's being paid, the method of payment, the terms of that contract as far as what asks there are, what deliverables are required, I would advise that be done in executive session.
It's not an existing contract, though.
The public knowledge, so public, no, I mean, it's public. I got it.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. This isn't, I was somewhat confused. If it's an existing contract, then discussion here is fine, because it's a done deal. It's an existing. Yes, ma'am.
Asking Mr. Stokes about it. I done said it.
And I apologize. The question specifically is?
Hired somebody that sued the city that used to work for us to do what? And you never brought it to the board. And did they have a contract?
Yes, there was a contract by the rules and regulations and bylaws governing the corporation. It was not something that necessarily needed to be brought to the board, although there were members of the board that were well aware. And in terms of reasoning, it was to make sure that these programs did not further incur any delay or gap, which we were already up against in terms of some of our other programs. At a certain point, having nothing to do with anything in the past, at a certain point, the scholarship potential recipients as well as the potential interns needed to be moved forward, be able to count on this program, and that is what was done. Past lawsuits, this, that, and the other, that has nothing to do with the children that benefited from moving the program forward.
Well, that's what I asked. What did she do? Not in general, what did she do? Definite, what did she do? How many people?
We provided a total of 5 scholarships, which you all approved, and we had a total of 13 interns in the program over the summer.
couldn't do that yourself?
I do a lot of things myself, but at a certain point, you're pulling either myself or staff off of what they've been hired to do, and now you're moving them into something that, okay, there's a ramp-up time, there's cost involved, their salary is now being used to apply to something that is not what they would normally be doing, and when you add that all up, bringing someone that was in charge of the program, administering it, for a penance compared to moving staff around, easy math.
Opinion. And
It's
what
only
you
one
said
that's come, so
also
one is- okay, you're right,
is,
you're right.
is certain board members knew about it. What is, this is a board. This is not her, me, him. This is a board. What do you mean certain board members knew about it?
When you have a situation that I was facing, you get counsel, you get feedback, you get opinions, you get thoughts on those opinions and feedback that you feel can be counted on valid. If there's something that needs to be approved, then that is a matter of the full board. Asking someone their thought process, their feelings, that's a human thing, human to human. The person just happens to be a board member. If they weren't, still would have sought their counsel.
I guess the issue I had.
Only thing I see is that I hope you're working on this a little faster, where you're backing against the wall again and have to hire again.
Sir, sometimes, and I deeply apologize, I'm not trying to be facetious, sometimes it's hard to follow your logic. You all just approved the YEP program last meeting. I just gave you an update on it. So to come back and say, well, I hope that you're moving faster in the center, the program would not even start getting away and marketed, as Mr. Director Albright pointed out last time, until January, February. So we are ahead of schedule. And as far as applying someone to do it, they're in the audience. We hired them 2 months ago.
Okay, so we're not hiring this out, right? We're not subcontracting this
No,
out?
sir, we
Okay.
have a gentleman sitting right there. That's what we were, that was what the gap was.
One thing.
I understand.
One issue I have had with the situation is that it should have been brought to the board. I understand that you go to certain board members for advice, but it's still out of courtesy. It should have been brought to the board due to the fact of the situation at hand. We could ignore it and not ignore it. It did happen. So because of that, out of courtesy, it should have been brought to the board regarding this subcontraction, even though you didn't have to. Thank
We
you.
know it.
All right, let's go to executive session. What time is it?
Before we go to, I wanted to ask you, are you sick?
I'm not well, but I'm not like critically ill or anything.
You sick enough to go in there and get us sick?
It's an allergy, so I don't think that I could commit. You haven't had that same allergy that I have.
Don't you?
A closed meeting or executive session will be held pursuant to the following sections. Chapter 551 Texas Government Code, 551072, 551074. Let us move to executive session. Time is now 8:50 and we're ready to reconvene our regular board meeting. May I have a roll call, please?
Beverly Raymond, Kayla Jacobs, Jerry LaBeouf, Daryl Anderson,
Here.
Morris Albright, Ingrid Holmes, Melvin Getwood. You have a quorum, Chair.
Awesome, awesome. Coming out of the executive session, we have two motions that will be made.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to approve a land sale to Bishop One LLC for 8.62 acres for a price of $62,100 an acre.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
I make a motion for the sale of land to Spidal Oil Company, approximately 2 acres, for a price of $62,100 an acre.
Have a second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Make a motion to adjourn?
No. No, because we have future agenda items. Any future agenda items?
That's right.
Any future agenda items?
Yes.
Come on.
I'd like to, I don't know what, I guess, I had it here. The agreement with Denton, Navarra, Zach, discuss their contract, I guess it is.
Discuss the attorney contract. Anything else? Now.
So move.
Well, I'll see y'all.
See you next year.
Oh, y'all come to my house for Christmas. Meeting adjourned. Y'all have a great one.
Where that little
Thank y'all so
Kit Kat
much.
come from?
Look for my emails.